Is it? Oh,
Well, we will see here soon. It
where
usually takes a little bit.
where are you calling in from today?
I am up in Northeast Ohio.
Mm, out
I'm
there.
back home. I'm at my mom's house actually.
I saw an article, or it was a Reddit post that was about how Cleveland area is the highest growing uh like real estate market in the United States right now.
It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. It's right on the lake. There's so much. There's a lot of good stuff here. A lot of good infrastructure. More so than most people. Like good scenery, great parks. Well, I've been all around the country, and I'm telling you, it is one of the best
I'm
places to
sure it
live.
gets slept on, like Ohio gets
Well,
kind of a
Ohio,
bad rap nationally.
yeah, but a lot of Ohio is like if you start getting south of like you go too far west and too far south, you do get into this like you know barren flat land where you're just growing wheat. And so, but if
Yeah,
you're
it's
up
almost it's like the beginning of the Midwest out there in some ways.
exact it's some parts, but like up here, like Northeast Ohio, you still have some hills and trees and stuff, so it's a different vibe. And further south you go, like into Cincinnati, you get more of like Appalachia. So it's like there's like three different areas, and in the Northeast, it's really slept on. All right, we are actually live. Cool. What's up, everybody? Matt here from Daily Crypto News, host of the Daily Crypto News podcast. We have Kyle over here, who is the editor in chief of Daily Crypto News. We're chilling. It is Wednesday, May 21st. It is around 2 o'clock Eastern Time, 11 Pacific. And we have a new all-time high. We're still chilling at around $109,000 Bitcoin. Oh, no, no, I am absolutely lying about that. We're at $106,000 Bitcoin right now. 106 500 to be exact. So we had a major correction from the all-time high, which was very much close to touching $110,000. Um, long story short, number goes up. We are trending the right way. Kyle, what are your thoughts?
Anytime, Bitcoin hits a new all-time high, it should be a, celebrated day. Hopefully this is an indicator of like a very strong summer that's coming. Bitcoin, there just seems to be a lot of headwinds now with like some of the macro stuff calming down, um, around tariffs and stuff. Like it's just kind of normalizing the kind of shock from it. We're now kind of 3, 4 months away out of that. Um, and yeah, it's a good day. Anytime Bitcoin hits a new all-time high, it's got to be a good day, right?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Look, so there's a couple things that I've been saying on the show that I think one is I think are going to prove out into the future, but let's talk about the past a little bit. We had Liberation Day. We saw Bitcoin go down and the whole market go down. I think we got into like the mid 70s, lower 70s, 73 or so. Um, and we had a lot of like people going like, "Oh, is it over? Are we gonna? What's going on? Are we going to go into a bear market?" So a lot of poo-poo. Fear greed index was pretty low for a long time, and then we started inching up. And honestly, I didn't even remember when we got into the number 50 on the fear green index. We just popped right up into the 70s and 80s, and now we're sitting there. We're at a new all-time high. And so what we saw is that number one is BTFD. Make sure that you are always scooping up some bags when you can, if you have some extra cash. I mean, we're not saying like, blow all your wad in one fell swoop and go in there and buy, $100,000 of Bitcoin. But, a lot of people who do that dollar cost average of $500 a week or $50 a week or whatever you can afford really do end up making out in the long term. And so when we hit today, we saw this new all-time high, which a lot of people were wondering, will we get there again? A lot of people were underwater because they did buy the last all-time high, which was around the same price, 109. And nobody knew if we're going to get back up there. Were we bear marking? There was a cycle over, or will we see it again? So now we touched it again. Obviously, bounced off, was called the all-time high, back down, a little correction. I think we're going to trend up. But one thing we do see, and one thing I would like to mention is that before the Bitcoin conference, and this is historical, as far back as I can remember, you always are going to get the Bitcoin conference pump. And we've talked about it for years in the space, is that you have this Bitcoin conference pump. Before the Bitcoin conference, your number goes up. Just so happens this time we're at a new all-time high. Doesn't usually happen this way, but we do have a up. But right when the Bitcoin conference happens, either maybe a day before, during the conference, or immediately after, you see a massive correction. So I personally would not be surprised if we see us break into the 110, maybe even 112s by next week, maybe even 115, and then abruptly and quickly and swiftly drop back into low 90s. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the there is usually this pump, as you've said, but I don't think it'll go up to like 115. I think it'll take more time to do that. Um, you did see a good little jolt today. Um, but I'm not really seeing like anything that would give that push. Like that's another like 5%. But there's nothing like this is the point. Like Bitcoin is likely the only volatile like one of the only assets in the world that's like subject to those big up and down choppy uh, changes. So seeing something like today where it goes with a 5% correction in a day isn't bad. It isn't unlikely. I don't know. I don't see it happening. All these like price predictions, I'm starting to just get more bullish in order to like maintain my expectations. Because I don't think like $1 million Bitcoin is gonna happen anytime soon. Um, Specifically based off some of this is like some of that like fear from that quantum conversation we had the other day. Um, but at the same time, yeah, there's a lot of it'll be interesting to see what happens at this conference and to see kind of like what JD Vance is gonna say. Like, does this give more headwinds? I have heard a lot about how I had this conversation. Go check out the conversation with Joe Sticco that I posted this past weekend. Just from him, he attended the White House summit. He's been a lot involved in a lot of regulatory conversations around crypto in the last few months. He feels really strongly that with better frameworks set up, that it's going to really push the industry forward. One of his key words from the talk, I asked him like at the end, I was like, "What's like a thing you can take forward?" Or not take forward, but like that keeps you grounded. And he said that this industry is always about progress and progression, and so that there's more acceleration, I think, coming with that when we can build these frameworks. So long answer. But yeah, I don't think by next week we're gonna be seeing 115, if that's
I
like
think
the question.
I did say 112 first, so I'll put a low high 112 and 115. I think we are going to go up before the conference. We do have a couple more days to go, but your point is about progress, and I think that's actually the best point, and that's another thing that we um, say on Daily Crypto News to all of our contributors that writes with us is that I pulled this up this morning because we saw a new all-time high, and I've been there's I was reached out to talk to a couple financial advisors here in Northeast Ohio that have been having clients asked to put their some of their funds into Bitcoin ETFs, and they're not familiar with Bitcoin or ETFs, or I'm sorry, with those ETFs and how that could fit into a portfolio. And so just in preparation of that talk, I mean, I was just looking at like the annual returns of Bitcoin, and from May of 2020 until May of 2025, we saw 93% year over year returns. I mean, and we're talking about looking at the S&P 500, which is 15%, and the Nasdaq 100, which is 21.3. All of those are outsized, absolutely bonkers returns, to be honest with you. So you should be happy in any of those funds. But if you're looking at something like 93%, you're going to see that's just insane. And so you're talking about if you price that in over the next 10 years and you put $100,000 into it, and you can even have a diminishing return of 20% year over year, which is what Michael Saylor talks about. And you add that to you apply that to that 93%, and then with a diminishing return, you're still talking outsized returns that you should be very happy with. Even if you bought in 2017 at the all-time high, went through a couple cycles and then had really hard years in 18, 19, and then 22 or whatever, you're still up thousands of percent. So Well, maybe more like 1,000% if you bought all time high. Yeah, maybe 20, well, $22,000 to 107. So we're talking about 500% from all time high to all time high. But those are still amazing year over year returns, even accounting for the all time highs, even if you factor in some of the lows in there. So look, this is a long term game. Like just like you're saying, it's about development, it's about progress, and the progress that is coming up into the market right now with these all time highs is on the backs of New Hampshire with a Bitcoin reserve, Texas going through the state legislature, and it's
Mhm.
maybe going to the governor after their reconciliation and their third vote. Could be on the governor's desk. That's another state with a Bitcoin reserve. The United States of America now is keeping their seized Bitcoin, but they also are looking at getting bills through that will invest in a Bitcoin reserve. We're talking about stablecoin acts. Acts. We're talking about more and more legislators, governors, mayors, and executive branch talking about how do we turn our cities, our states, our regions, and our country into a crypto hotspot. Meanwhile, in Europe and other places are also looking at this as part of the game theory, and saying like, well, if America's doing this or if this place is doing this, maybe we should think about it as well. And so you're right, progression. I don't see that we're going to. I just see all positive news coming out of this.
Yeah. Um, let's just take in another opinion here. I'm looking at an article from the block that was just posted today about the new all-time high. They're quoting the head of derivatives at Bitfinex, who says that the new all-time high arrived following, quote, a near flawless setup backed by geopolitical de-escalation, citing the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and some ceasefire and de-escalation there. Improved regulatory like stuff. So all these things that you were just saying, the Texas, the New Hampshire, as well as macro tailwinds, and those are seen down here in another section of the article that says a number of indicators support or sorry, this is Standard Chartered's head of global digital assets, Jeffrey Kendrick, quoted saying, "A number of indicators support our view that Bitcoin is headed for the next leg higher." And that's US Treasury term premium is at a 12-year high. Time of day analysis suggests that US-based investors may be seeking non-US assets, as well as he says, meanwhile, Bitcoin accumulation by quote whales has been strong. So this guy even thinks that a $200,000 Bitcoin target by the end of 2025 is in possibility. Um, so there's just some like specific details in there, right? The de-escalation, these macro things, and regulatory headwinds as well. So there are some strong indicators there. Um, it, I've just been thinking like this is kind of what we want and what we've been expecting. Um, there's something kind of going around on the internet today, around crypto Twitter. Uh, the former Messari CEO and founder of Messari, Ryan Selkis, is going on a little shitstorm tirade against Blockworks. Basically, based off he apparently gave them some all exclusive interview access to like go over what his rationale and like the kind of the recap, maybe not fallout like of his firing last year or his stepping down. He stepped down. He definitely didn't get fired. He stepped down from Asari amidst like kind of a bit of like some chaos around like his strong opinions for like pushing crypto really hard in the election,
Hmm.
and he was very strong for Trump. He was very anti-Kamala, and kind of pushed all his chips into the Republican Trump side, saying like this is going to save the industry. Um, and he's come out. Apparently the clip on the interview that's only available is him saying like these motherfuckers should thank me, and like I'm not getting any thank yous. Um, and I think it's really indicative, and, like, to tie that back into what we've been talking about is, like, yeah, there should be a thank you given to Selkis because of, like, what's happening is what the crypto industry wants, like, people want these frameworks. There was just a tweet today with the Sergey Navarov from Chainlink saying, all the alpha and bullishness is in TradFi wanting DeFi, right? So, like, all of this kinda mainstream stuff is is pivoting and looking at the industry and going, "We're interested now." And I think that's what people want. Um, and that's kind of the best you can get heading into this summer is keep adding to those building blocks and making this industry as attractive as possible. Um, the recent Coinbase news about um, their customer service agents internationally being compromised doesn't necessarily help with that. But issues like KYC
It
are at
doesn't
the
hurt.
center of that. Yeah, I mean, the KYC issue there, I think, and, like, the privacy issue is, like, the main point is, like, Coinbase doesn't want this info, and so if they would prefer to not have it, they would. It's a liability for them is the point.
Right. Nobody. Again, I think that's a yeah, that's a non-issue. Coinbase, I think, handled that situation very well. I think that Brian Armstrong coming out and being a strong CEO and literally saying we're just not going to give you anything, and if anybody can find out, I'm going to give you 20 million, is absolutely the right thing to do. And again, like you said, he doesn't want to
Mhm,
have customer information. He doesn't want to be dealing with this liability. But when and everybody is always, and I don't think a lot of people, most people haven't worked for it with big companies and understand just the vast amount of attacks that companies go through day in and day out. DDoS attacks are just a thing that just you have to deal with. Just hacks and fraud and phishing and there's mass training when it comes to these companies of how to deal with phishing and social engineering and all kinds of different things. And so, like, I think that the if people knew the amount of times that all these companies were getting hit and hacked and attacked and having a security team that's just mitigating all of this, people would be absolutely shocked. But I think that they handled it the right way. Just going back into we were talking about the Bitcoin price. I know Jordan, he in the chat, he said that he would want to know our idea of the price. We already talked about that, Jordan, but I'll let you know again. Kyle, in summary, says that he doesn't see it going up to like 112 or 115, but he is bullish, and he's talking about the long-term development. My personal opinion, I think we're going to continue to go up before the Bitcoin conference, and then we'll have a sharp correction. But I also put a YouTube video in the chat that is talking about the market breadth and how Bitcoin has performed when this indicator has hit, where that indicator looks like after the indicator triggers, we can have a 40 to 50% upside. So we're talking about maybe a 130 Bitcoin in the near future, talking about like the next 3 to 6 months. And I don't disagree with you, Kyle. My average in average medium case scenario for Bitcoin has always been around the 180 mark. So I would be happy with anywhere between 150 and 200. I have traditionally been low on my predictions, and like I thought 50K was the last bull, but we hit 69. Um, I really didn't know what to predict about this, but I have been saying 180, and I think the 200 mark is very doable, and I wouldn't surprise me if we hit two. And if you look at other things like the stock to flow, which hasn't been broken yet, if we're talking about just average over the cycles, you would have to be in the 400 to $600,000 range for the next cycle, this whole next 4 year cycle. And if we hit that, we still are in the stock to flow, mark stock to flow area. So I do
yeah,
see
I mean,
there's gonna be a lot of
yeah, I don't disagree. Like, there's definitely scenarios where Bitcoin just goes parabolic and, like, rips tits off of the market. Like, there's definitely,
rip tits,
you
bro.
know
Okay.
there are scenarios, right? These are, like, financial risk scenarios, like, the one quote I just had from the block, from this guy, Digital Assets at Standard Chartered, it says non-US assets, right, Bitcoin attracts that. Well, why would that? Well, why would people want that? Well, there's risk in the United States. Call it Trump risk around Trump, call it risk around just the shitty economy and the fact that, the infrastructure is failing. There's all sorts of reasons you could point to that. But it's a risk on asset now, the US dollar or US assets, US-based assets, and
Mhm. That's a very good point.
Bitcoin's literally created as the opposite of that, out of the 2008 market. So,
Right.
yeah,
That's a
it's
very
it's
that's a very
something
good
to
point.
if the US economy it's kind of like dual edged in this sense because if the US economy does well, you're like and does well and opens doors to Bitcoin, you're likely going to see that faster acceleration and higher and faster returns. But if the US economy is slogging, right, and these tariffs are still an issue, you're likely not gonna see that parabolic rip tits off. What's gonna cause that is a full TradFi pivot, and great regulatory gains, 30 of 50 American states adopting, Bitcoin reserves or something like that, right? Like
Did
something
you just say Chad Vibe pivot?
TradFi pivot.
Oh, I thought you said Chad Vibe. I was like, what? I was like, all right, man. I'm
I
feeling it
spoke with
though.
somebody and they called it TradeFi, but yeah,
Okay.
ChadFi pivot. That's a good way. Trad definitely works.
Okay, so I have a question for you, and but
Mhm,
then we have to get pivot from Bitcoin, and I want you to talk about Ethereum and alts because I know Jordan's asking about that. But my
mhm.
question for you, it really quick, is: do you think that this cycle is the same as all the other cycles? And I'll give you my opinion really quick before you go. My opinion is if this cycle is 100% the same way as all the other cycles so far. And the only way it's going to be different is if we do hit an all-time high in a bear market and we do not have a complete sell-off or a complete overcorrection or 60% correction like we see sometimes, and that's going to be propped up by traditional finance and the ETFs. And if that doesn't happen, then we have a new Bitcoin cycle routine. But as of right now, it's 100% the same.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say it's 100% the same, but yeah, I mean, it's following similar tracks as previous cycles, but um, I think there are indications. Some of the stuff I was just talking about, regulatory issues, um, a full TradFi pivot, those would be things in like mainstream adoption in some sense, like if there's a Sol ETF, like that to me would be like, wow, that's a great indicator that mainstream is coming. Um, but yeah, so that to me is like, there's a reason that these cycles are different. Like there is a Bitcoin ETF, there is an Ethereum ETF. There are reasons for this cycle, for it to be different. As you've just indicated, like the market, the gains are kind of following the same trajectory. But, yeah, I would and there are a lot of people out there, there are resources you can find that will argue that this is, like, the last Bitcoin cycle, right? In the sense that I think there's been kind of 4 overall, right? Um, and that this will be the last one that it breaks, then you'll see, like, more mainstream adoption, and that's because of some of these things I just said. There are ETFs, there are Ethereum ETFs. You're starting to see reserve systems being created. There are now, uh governments and countries of the world that have adopted it as national currencies. There are a lot of reasons why it's not just different or that it is different and it's not just the same as last time. Um, and most of that is just mainstream stuff. Um, but there are so many reasons to think that it could fail still.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Okay, so hey, move on. Let's move on to alts. What are we thinking about Ethereum? What are we thinking about the alt market? Look, everybody's saying that Ethereum's laggy. It's only at 2,500 or whatever it is, and if it was selling Bitcoin, we're saying oh, it should be $7,000. So what are you seeing in the news?
Yeah, I mean, so you had the Pectra upgrade, which came has it been like just like a week ago? um, But yeah, more or less like a week ago, you had the biggest upgrade of Ethereum since, like, the merge, and the merge is coming on, gosh, like 3 or 4 years now, um, and what was Petra? Petra was, like, huge UI upgrades, major upgrades of, like okay, Petra was in a lot of ways, like, the technical change, where Petra is now following it up with, like, UI, usability, um, you know, kinda these surface changes to back up the, like, huge um, tech change that happened. So that's, like, a really positive thing. You saw if you saw Ethereum spike like in the last week. I think it was below 2,000. Now it's sitting what today above probably 2.6, I think. Um, and so like what I'm seeing is that range of 2.24, 2,400 and 29, 2,900 is the like kind of range it should be sitting at comfortably. If it breaks out of that range north, that's positive. If it's below, it's probably negative. But you're gonna see it slowly trail behind Bitcoin. That's kind of historical as well. It's chasing kind of slowly behind it. And so if you see, Bitcoin going to 200,000, you really want to hope Ethereum's getting to 5K at that point. Um, but, in general across alts, like, what I would say at this point is pay attention to, crime. There are a lot of projects out there that are building in the alt space that, um, could get hit with something, right? Like, this Movement Labs story, I think, is, bigger than a lot of people think is bigger than what people think. And going through this kinda Trump situation, um, there's gonna be more people caught, and so you gotta pay attention to the people who are running these teams, um, at a lot of these alts and, like, alt L1s, um, and it's just something to pay attention to, uh, like how strong of a play are some of these projects, like, I hate the fucking guy's guts, but Justin Sun, it was announced, I think today or yesterday, he's the top holder of the Trump coin. He's gonna have an individual dinner with Trump. So what does that mean? Stop.
Nothing. That's what it means. It
Probably,
means nothing.
but no, it's probably positive for Tron, is if it's anything, it's bullish Tron. And, like, there's this Ripple Circle news, like, what I would just pay attention to is mergers and acquisitions when it comes to these alts. Who's gonna be paired with who? I spoke about this a little bit on, like, Trends with Benefits, where it's like, this isn't like, an exact situation, but it's like taking 2 examples. So imagine, like, you have, like, Charles Schwab, and then imagine Charles Schwab buys Uniswap. And now anytime in Charles Schwab where you wanna go trade a stock, you now have a Uniswap DEX, where you go in there and the Bitcoin that you're trading is now funneled through Uniswap. And it's like those types of things are stuff that I could see in the future happening, where there's some big TradFi, and this is what we were just talking about earlier. TradFi, this was literally a tweet from Chainlink CEO yesterday or today, or the guy was Chain Yoda, who's the head of developer relations and like a big advisor for a project called Avail, which is run by Polygon's 2 founders. Anyways, this is a guy I've met in San Francisco. He tweeted with Chainlink's Sergey today about the TradFi pivoting to DeFi. So, anyways, so when you're looking at some of these altcoins, it's going to be impossible to play the Solana market like right now. It's really dried up. What you're going to need is you're going to need to see these pumps, and then you're going to see probably more altcoin action. But yeah, like I personally would stay out of altcoins, stay out of like the meme coin space right now. I would sit on the sidelines. Like there's just not a lot to be gained right there right now, in my opinion. Um, I would sit in major coins. I would watch Sol, ETH, Bitcoin. Maybe some alts to pay attention to would be like Berachain or Sui. I'm kind of bullish on Sui. They're doing a lot of like culture gaming plays that are important. Um, and then yeah, Berachain. I just don't think Berachain's like proof of liquidity has caught up to it yet. So I think there will be a potential spike over the summer, regardless if there's like some big DeFi summer. I just think that Berachain has like the potential to go like 25, 30% higher than what it is, because it's sitting around like $2 or $3. And so it should just be able to go higher, a little bit higher, based off of just what they've built. But then again, like, pay attention to crime, like, you never know, like, there could be things like this Movement Lab story. I just think it's bigger than what people think. That there's more projects out there doing this kind of stuff. And that's just my journalist mind in the back going like, if there's one project doing this, there's probably more projects doing this.
So
So,
my
um,
my my
yeah.
opinion on that is that you're right about one thing, and I think you're right about two things. Is one, I would not be an alt right now. But in number could go up again. Everything is going to follow Bitcoin, in my opinion. I've always seen it.
Mhm.
Um, but you got to you have to keep looking at these mergers and acquisitions. One thing that we're seeing though in these mergers and acquisitions, and two, everybody's I guess disbelief, because this is not what they're invested in, is a lot of these people want TradFi. A lot of these people want IPOs. A lot of these people want these traditional listings. A lot of these people are not caring about your token. What they want is they want product market fit in the actual market, not the crypto market. There are a couple companies that are purposely and consciously saying that we want to make sure that we are using cryptography and crypto in air quotes as a backbone of our and decentralization, and our community as a backbone of our company, and we're gonna sacrifice gains to make that a pillar of our company. Meanwhile, a lot of these other people and companies are doing exactly what you said. They're looking at traditional styles of mergers and acquisitions. They're looking at regulation. They're looking at getting the right licenses. They're looking at all of this stuff, and then they're going to go IPO. And if they do go IPO and people are trading their stocks, or they're folded into other companies, your crypto doesn't mean crap at that point. They don't care about the token price of their stock price, and their shareholders and their board own the stock. And so I think that we have to really understand who's building in the space and who's keeping a eye on the fundamentals of what they were started for, and who's holding the tokens, how they got there, and then the people who are actually kind of like merging off into the sunset with other things. And I think that is a very, very big trend. And really quick, I want to say Joran, or Joran, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name. He just corrected me in the chat. He's like, hey, you don't know how to say my name for the most part. It's spelled like this. It's pronounced with an U. Bro, I'm trying my best. Ross DeBello, what's up, dude?
Where are you seeing this chat? Is it on Substack?
Yeah, yeah. I have the live open in Substack, and in um
Maybe I should have
also
it open.
on Twitter, and also on YouTube.
Um, but yeah, no, I think yeah, like to your point, like um, I mean, an alt to play around with too. Like I would if I were somebody, I would be playing around on Monad. Like that's a community I've played around on. Um, it's something that I've just been kind of bullish on since it was kind of announced. There are some of these other alt L1s, but it seems like Monad will likely have a decent airdrop in the future. So playing around on there, testing out some of the games. Um, yeah, I think it's always good fun to like try out some of the check them out. It helps the project, it helps the space get better, and then you likely will get some airdrop in the future. I'm not saying it's like a way you should be working to get money or something or expecting, some $1,000,000 windfall, but getting, $50 or something for poking around on a chain a couple times isn't that bad. Um, and just like playing some games.
You know what's interesting, and this has nothing to do with crypto. The amount of people, Dutch people that listen to this show is just absolutely crazy, honestly. Well, like, and the thing about the Dutch people is they always write in. And so, like, there's quite a few Dutch people that just keep writing into the show and stuff like that. So I appreciate it, even though they're a big percent. They're not the biggest percentage. I think they're probably number 10 or 11 or 12 on the list of countries that listen. Obviously, the United States, Australia, and UK is number one, number two, and number three. Um, but they're still, I think they're in the top at least 15. And for the number that they have a disproportionate amount of people that write in and communicate and engage. So shout
I'm
out to
a I'm
my Dutch
a
homies.
I'm a huge fan of the Netherlands. I just I spent New Year's there. I was in I stayed in Haarlem, but then I was in I jumped over to Amsterdam for New Year's to watch the fireworks on the canal. Um, but yeah, no, like there's an area there called the Randstad. Randstad? It's like the round state. Um, and it is what I understand, it's roughly the size of Los Angeles. Um, Population is, I think, a little bit smaller than LA or slightly smaller. Or no, I think it's slightly bigger in the Netherlands because LA is only like 8,000,000, so I think it's like 12 or 14 in the Netherlands. Um, but, the quality of life in the Randstad, it's, like, incredibly high. Um, and interestingly enough, like, that's where some of the Europe's most important chip makers are, like computer chips. There's like a deep tech and financial history there too. The Dutch were the first to invent like the stock market as well. So
Wait. I just got corrected. I don't know how to read. He said he has a Dutch name, but he's from Belgium. What, man? You
ooh,
guys are
okay,
confusing over there, man. I'm done with this guy.
dude, man, that's the that
Jurin. Yeah.
talk about a country that can't decide things. Belgium, they have no idea what language they should speak. It's Belgian, French, like like I was just in the Netherlands. Like I spent a bunch of time in Brussels as well. I love Brussels. It's a great city. The funny thing about Brussels too is it used to be a Dutch city. It was a Dutch city probably like 20 or 30 years ago, but since it became the European capital, it slowly turned into a French city. And I've gone there with Dutch speakers, and they're just so mad. Like I've gone there with dudes from like Flanders or from uh yeah, dudes from like out in like Bruges, and then friends from like Randstad. And we go to Brussels, and they're like, "It's so sad to be in a city that like used to speak my language and now it doesn't." Or like they'll purposely go to shops and like push Dutch, or like they'll yeah go to bars and they'll be like, "This place is sick" because they speak Flemish, and it's like, okay, it's real
The
interesting.
Europeans, man, they're something special. I love it. Really quick, I have one more. Oh, we have three official languages: Dutch, French, and a bit of German. Okay,
Yeah, in the
great. Well,
South, there's
this is a
like
crypto
in
podcast, not a, geopolitical history podcast. Real quick, last question I have for you before we go too long on this and we go on that tangent, Kyle. The question I'm dealing with right now, and this is going to a little bit of politics, um, is Eric Adams. And Eric Adams is out there on the
Mhm.
campaign trail running as an independent. And he's saying that we're going to turn New York into the crypto industry mecca of the world. And that we're going to, boost the industry. And he's talking a big game. And people are wondering what the hell is going on. My personal opinion, obviously, is that, and I said this on the show a couple times, is that he is pandering. He's looking for donations. 4 years ago, he ran on the same thing. He got donations. Everybody's like, "Oh, Eric Adams." He took three measly checks in Bitcoin, and then we haven't heard about Bitcoin again, or crypto, or New York City. And now he's running as an independent, which is he's gonna lose because I can't see New York City not voting for a Democrat, and going for Eric Adams independent, which with a little bit of his baggage, true or false, or as serious or unserious as you think the allegations are. I don't see them going for an independent, but he is trying to raise a lot of money because and trying to pander, in my opinion, to get back into the graces, or actually just get back into the race as well. What do you think about Eric Adams and that whole situation?
um like simple answer to that is like I generally agree to that. Yeah, he's doing this, he's pandering, he's trying to um earn votes. It's kind of typical politician stuff. But I think the policy move is representative of like something kind of greater in the world that's happening, to bring it back to that. Um because I heard about this, there's a city in India that's doing something similar. It's like the pet project of the Indian Prime Minister, um, Modi. It's called the Gift City, the, Gujarat International Finance Tech City, and it's more or less about, creating kind of these tech city states in the world where, and there was actually an article, gosh, I wanna say like 10 years ago, written in the San Francisco Chronicle. It was like an op-ed that caused a lot of controversy because there was this tech guy writing about splitting California and basically making San Francisco, like, Bay Area, its own, like, tech city state. And, again, there is this kind of slow move, maybe it's a little faster than I think, of, these technocrats, where the top is Curtis Yarvin, the, like, guy on the spectrum from San Francisco who's this, like, um, really kind of bizarro guy who has really curious ideas on political science. He calls himself a Carlist, which is like an 18th century idea of like believing in kings. Like he's a top-down hierarchical guy, believes that technocrats should kind of basically be at the top, defining policy and defining how things work, essentially being like the CEO of society. So like the chief executive officer of, the United States. And that's a lot of Curtis Yarvin is a huge influence on Steve Bannon, who then has like kind of crafted a lot of this policy into turning Trump into a strong man. But my overall point here is that like there is a push of trying to get more technocrat control across the world, and policies like this are kind of the seeds or in some ways like the fruits of it, of the push for this, because I believe like he's trying to turn New York City, Eric Adams, he's trying to turn New York City into the center of blockchain, the center of Web3. But at the same time, like you could be using that policy to be like, oh, well, then let's turn it into an economic free zone or something like that. That's essentially what Trump's now trying to do with Gaza, right? They've gone instead now, and this is literally in the last like maybe 72 hours. Their rhetoric change is, oh well, instead of like handing it over to Israel, why don't we just turn Palestine into some sort of economic free zone and make it free for everybody? And it's like, well, what the fuck? Like this is all backwards. But at the same time, it's this policy philosophy and ideology is rooted in that technocrat economic free zone, turn these areas into city states that um again these basic like a Singapore in some ways, right? Where like tech can go and have a safe haven, but at the same time, like build these places so that they can have like billionaire tax havens and be free from the regulatory pressures and the um you know, surveillance and regulate whatever, oversight committees, blah, blah, blah. They can just go and build and innovate, blah, 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 build the network state. Um, again, this is that's what I hear essentially when I hear Eric Adams saying that is my point. And I think it's just another one of these dominoes of people trying to push this idea of trying to have technocrats control everything and control of daily lives. And it's just all smoke to me. I think it's so stupid that, like, I'm not necessarily opposed to, like, Curtis Yarvin's ideas that society should be that decision making in society should be a little bit more hierarchical. But at the same time, then you get into so many power balances, and then it's like, okay, well, at least in the United States, we have representative democracy, which could be a sort of form of that. Um, blah blah blah. Like this again, this gets into deep political science, but I feel like the Constitution of the United States like really gets down into this. Like the founding fathers of the United States were dealing with a lot of this shit a long time ago, on how to build societies. Um, anyways, I just got lost in talking about that. But the whole point of
If you guys didn't see Kyle hit the vape pen before the show, you guys are figuring it out right now. That the vape pen has kicked in. Kyle is down in the rabbit hole.
yeah, but yeah, no, I mean, again, just back to the point, Eric Adams, like, um, I I don't think it's overall, I don't think it's a bad thing to want to attract crypto to New York. Like, New York is a mecca for finance. It's a positive thing. But I think people just need to try and read between the lines and see where, other policies are being made that follow similar ideology, and think of what if a policy is created, what will the outcome or like 'cause, like, what could like, always try to think of, like, what would be the worst thing? Like, if somebody wants to create this policy, what's the worst thing they could do with it? And that's, like, again, just, like, what I think, like, "Oh, what's the worst thing he could do by attracting, uh, crypto to New York City, turning it into some sort of technocrat,
Yeah,
like,
we are
tax
saying
haven.
we are saying two different things because I don't think that he's doing any of that. And like I said, it's just a grift. He's looking for donations so he can win an
Mhm.
election. And I do see that there are people who are pushing this, but there's two different things that happen within politics these days. The things that you say to get people to give you the money and then there's the things that you do. And I see a much more of the things people say to get the money than doing the things that they need to do to promote any kind of certain policy or forward momentum. And that is across the board. And that's just not Eric Adams, but everybody.
And
We
do
have
you think I'll just say this one thing. Do you think part of that motivation is because he's running for an independent and he will need more money?
No, because I think that he said the same thing 4 years ago. We didn't see him do anything about it, and now he's saying the same thing
Okay.
4 years later because he needs the money, and he saw that the crypto industry stepped up for him because he said the thing. Didn't we see the same thing from Francis Suarez? We did. Where did he go? Didn't we see the same thing from Donald Trump? He got support, he won. Didn't we see the same thing from many other candidates? Jasmine Crockett got a huge influx from crypto pack lobbyists, Coinbase pack when she ran. Now she's in office, so they bought a
Come on,
Democrat
man.
there.
The bankless guys supported, Kamala. I'm
Um,
kidding, I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
but the long story
That
short
is
is
true.
you see this, but then at the same time, I haven't heard any kind of push for.
Yeah,
It
no, I get
it's a
what you mean.
grift. It's a grift, and honestly, and
Mhm.
the crypto guys have enough money to throw around so they can get 1 or 2 guys in there, and they got Trump in there, and Trump is doing the thing.
Yeah, Eric Adams easily probably went to one of those Trump, New York City summit parties or something like that. Eric Adams shook a couple hands and was like, "Yeah, maybe these guys can get me some money and get me elected again." Hmm,
100%.
yeah.
100%. But I just wanna see more people do the thing,
It's that's the Occam's razor, right? The simplest answer.
and I just don't yeah, and I don't but and I think that Jasmine Crockett, in as much as she is 100% a rubber stamp for every Dem policy, I don't know how she votes on crypto or has voted on crypto in the past. So let's see if that money was worth it for the lobbyists.
Yeah.
Anyway, 47 minutes. We went through politics. We can go on that tirade forever. But guys, I'm going to be off from Daily Crypto News tomorrow because like I said on the show, I will be in a house with rowdy kids. And so I'm not going to try to record where there's kids running around. So we are off tomorrow. Kyle and I will be back on Friday. Maybe we can do a live if we have some juicy news, and we have some interviews that came out of where was Patrick?
Patrick went to the Consensus Conference in Toronto.
Oh, okay. So we have some conversations that's going to be coming out there. Maybe 1 or 2 on Daily Crypto News, and then you'll see some of them being published on dailycryptonews.net. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Kyle, thanks for popping on. Kyle just got his windows done, and so we're yeah we scheduled around that.
And for those about to watch, go Tottenham. Tottenham is playing Manchester City in the Europa League final, starting in less than 10 minutes. Go Tottenham.
Right on, brother. I'll talk to you. Thanks, man. See you guys.
All right. Ciao.